This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself in exile in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. In a sense, we've come to our nation's capital to cash a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
My grandfathers, my fathers, my brothers, I lift up my voice and raise it high, telling the stories of your children's cries. For our ability to survive the onslaught of the enemy's drugs, guns, and alcohol, his prisons and his killing fields, depends directly on whether you are willing to stand up and resist the outrages that are being heaped upon us as a people and build a new society. Yes, the task is difficult. The odds are against you. But you must organize to find a way or make your own way.
Go ahead, brother.
You must change today so that tomorrow may dare to be different. And when you have fought back and regained your pride, when you have won some battles, when you are able to tell the stories of your heroism, when you can pass on to your young the tradition of struggle through examples of your having stood up for a better tomorrow, when you take control of our institutions, our media, our schools, when you maximize our economic resources towards our own benefits, when you stop making excuses, when you start standing with our mothers, when you stick it out with your families, when you start mentoring our young, when you start teaching us to be humane, then we can build a new nation of strong people. Your sons and daughters will no longer need to belong to gangs because they do belong. Our youth will no longer be seeking drugs as an escape because they would have outlets in our society to develop themselves. When you start setting the conditions for our youth to fulfill their humanities, then we will not be in despair. We will be whole, complete, and hopeful. My fathers, you must shape the vision of tomorrow. But in order for that vision to become a reality, you must rededicate yourself to a new beginning. Go back to your families. Go raise and teach your children. Go back and organize throughout this nation to bring about a better day for our people. Our enemies can destroy us one by one, but no one can stop 1 million men organized and committed.
Go ahead.
you.
I come today as an artist, as a mother, as a sister, as a black woman, as an African, as a philanthropist, as a struggler. I stand today here with you, and I recognize that this is the beginning of the new world. This is the beginning of the new world. As we stand together, I weep. I weep for my family because I know that tears bring joy. And I know that this is the beginning of the freedom of all the slaves and the slave masters. I weep for my people because I know that tears bring joy. This is the beginning of the freedom of the slaves and the slave masters. Thank you.
It's easy for us to place it all on Donald Trump's shoulders. It's easy for us to place Pittsburgh on his shoulders. It's easy for me to place Charlottesville on his shoulders. It's easy for us to place El Paso on his shoulders. This is us. And if we're going to get past this, we can't blame it on him. He's a manifestation of the ugliness that's in us.
How long are you going to sit around begging white people to do for us what we have the power to do for ourselves?
And I feel it and see it every day. And every black man watching this show know you are enemies. And you have the nerve to stand up here and say Elijah Muhammad's poison in my mind. He cannot teach us that you are enemy. You taught us, and your people daily. You
Well, I'm here, and I'm ready to go this morning. I am here, and I'm ready to go this morning. I want to thank everybody for joining me this morning. I am the Rational Man, and we have a subject for you this morning. The Great Negro Exodus and the 7 Signs of Apocalypse. And this is part 1. And I'm telling you, you want to tell people to join. You want to tell people to listen this morning. You really do. Because you are going to be surprised at actually what I have to say and what this is about. I know some of you thinking certain things, but I'm here to tell you that it's a complete different subject than what you might think just from the wording of it. This is part 1. It's going to take several parts to do this. And so we're starting out with part 1. Brothers and sisters, we have entered some very dark days, very, very dark days. And many people will not speak of these days primarily because, quite frankly, they have not been given the words to do so, nor have they the energy necessary to speak to what needs to be spoken to and learn as they go. As a result, many are not prepared for the practical steps that's got to be taken to come out on the other side, as it were, as pure gold, as it were, so to speak. There's a deception that they speak about, but the deception is not coming. The deception is already here. You know, it was George Washington
And they say it was just a apocryphal rumor, but back in 1777, that was called the Valley Forge prophecy. And it claimed that an angel came to George Washington and said that there would be three great perils facing America. And the Revolutionary War was one, the Civil War was the second, and the third one was a war of invasion, where foreigners would invade America, and that would be the third problem. And whether or not it was true that he had his dream or not, it's just ironic of the fact that this apocryphal prophecy was talked about before these things actually occurred. And so the deception and the necessity for the American people to understand what is before us is so necessary that I cannot be quiet. I've tried. I can't be quiet about this. It was Thomas Jefferson who said, "Indeed, I tremble for my nation when I reflect that God is just." He was talking about slavery, by the way. "I tremble for my nation when I reflect that God is just and that justice cannot sleep forever. And that considering the numbers and nature and natural means only, a revolution of the wheel of fortune," he's talking about a revolution of the wheel of fortune, "an exchange of situation is among the possible," do you hear me? "The possible determiners." He didn't use that word. He said events. "That it may become probable by supernatural inference." We got a problem, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. In his 1976 essay, The Fate of Empires, British historian Sir John Glove analyzed 11 major European empires. He determined that they typically lasted about 250 years and followed 7 predictable phases. And the first one was the age of pioneers, in which a previously obscure hardy people overrun or displaced defenseless nations and emerged by courage and initiative. He said that was the first phase. Phase 2 was the age of conquest. The rising power expands militarily, adopting sophistication of older civilizations while building massive empires. Now, it's important that you understand building the sophistication of older empires. In other words, they took from the older empire and built on that, which is the evolution of humanity, actually. Then there was the age of commerce, John Glove talks about in his letter, or essay, I should say. And this is when vast lands and resources are secured, facilitating wealth generation through a trade and international exchange. And then the fourth age is the age of affluence. Monetary gain and luxury becomes the sole public pursuit, or materialism, and military fighting fades as the wealthy buy off enemies. Do you see that? And then there was the age of intellect, where immense funding goes towards scholarly pursuits, colleges, and philosophical debates through society often becomes fragmented and disunited. And in that age, the society begins to think that debate is problem solving. That if you debate it and if you win a debate, the problem is solved. That's what he's talking about there. And you ought to read Sir John Glove's essay on this. The age of decadence is the sixth age, and it's marked by materialism and widespread pessimism. frivolity, and the rise of a welfare state, weakening religion, and a pervasive defensive mindset. And then lastly, the age of decline and collapse. And this collapse is sudden and fast. See, it starts off slowly, but by the time you get to the seventh step, the age of decline, the collapse is sudden and fast. And it stems from internal conflicts and external pressures, leading to the final loss of wealth, power, and eventual downfall of the civilization. Now, more on this in upcoming segments, but suffice it to say, brothers and sisters, that the American empire is evolving. This is what I'm saying. We're going to go more into Sir John Glove's analysis later, but I want to say right here that the American empire, and I put that in air quotes, is evolving above the skin and race-based European model of civilization. And I'll come back to that later. Now, there was another book written by Ray Dalio called Principles for, what is Dalio's book? Principles, and I've read it 1,000 times. Principles for, let me get it right here. Let me put it up here. Ray Dalio's Principles right. Is it up there yet? The Changing World Order and Why Nations Succeed and Fail. That's Ray Dalio's book. And by the way, he goes into John Glove's analysis also, and he just kind of expands on that. So I'll speak on this later. But suffice it to say, brothers and sisters, we have entered into some very, very dark times, and that is necessary for one to speak out on these matters and deal with it so that the country can deal with it and really speak clear words. So our subject today is the great Negro Exodus and the 7 signs of apocalypse. And as I said, this is part 1 of that whole idea. So let me get right down to it. And if could you tell somebody to tune in? Tell someone to tune in, because we're going to go over some stuff that you may or may not have ever heard, and you're going to see some interpretations of some things that you may have thought you knew what was going on in America and the fate of America, but you are going to be surprised after this series that the fate of America and the trajectory, and I advise you to read Ray Dalio's book, because he talks about it from a financial standpoint. But the fate of this country, you may think is going in one direction, but the God, the all, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it has those who are raised up by the desire of the people of any situation, who bring the words to you necessary. You may not like the words. You may not like what you hear. But there are those who are raised up with the voice necessary to bring you what you need to hear for your survival. If you read the Bible, you will notice that many times the prophets that came and had the word, the people didn't like them. And many of them were killed because the people didn't like them, or isolated because the people didn't like what they had to say. This went on in science as well as general society. There was those scientists who contradicted the state or the church, were often isolated because of their findings. So let me go into the main text. I'm going to use some main text. Let me see here. The main text that I'm going to be using as we go through this is The Miseducation of the Negro by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. I'm going to be using, obviously, Sir John Glover's book, The Fate of Nations. I'm going to be pulling from Ray Dalio's book, and it is a very good financial analysis, and he's written many, many more books. If you really want to understand global economics, you might want to read Ray Dalio's book. I'm going to be coming from the philosophy and opinions of the Honorable Marcus Garvey, Message to the Black Man by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And those are the resources that I will mainly be pulling from, as well as the Bible and other sources, so that you can follow up on what I'm saying. These are the main texts from the first lesson. So there are those who have a problem with how I come across. And what I want you to try to do is to somewhat ignore my delivery and maybe try to see past the delivery. I might not be as eloquent or as dynamic or as polished as some would be, but try to see what I'm saying. Suspend your judgment long enough to try to understand and then be understood. So the great Negro Exodus and the 7 signs of apocalypse. Let me give you a few definitions. The word Negro I'm using from the Spanish and Portuguese definition, meaning Negro or black, and from Latin meaning black. It was first used in 1555, which really is when European slavery began, as opposed to the commonly thought of year of 1619. In 1555, the first Africans from Judah, which is modern day Benin, were taken into slavery by Sir John Hawkins on the ship Jesus. And I want you to understand why this is important, that they were taken from Judah and brought to the Western world. Judah was modern day Benin, and it was a very powerful nation in West Africa. And the other Africans were jealous of its growth and prosperity and spirituality. So slavery mainly concentrated on getting Africans from Judah, which is now modern day Benin. It wasn't so much a thing where they just came in and took Africans haphazardly. They just found somebody in the bush and they just took him as a slave, though that happened. But there was a concerted effort to go into one particular nation, the nation of Judah, and get those people, because they wanted to weaken that particular nation. And Sir John Hawkins in 1555 on the ship Jesus was the first. And for 64 years, these Africans were bred and the parents were killed. It was a system of breeding and then killing off the parents. And the offspring were then bred with each other and then killed. And so this was done for 64 years to wipe out their memory of any existence before what they had been, before what they were being taught. So in other words, you breed 2 people, the baby is born, you kill the baby, you breed 2 more people, the baby is born, you kill the parents, and then you breed those 2. So, brothers and sisters of the Negro race, we have absolutely no idea of who we are. None. Because through this breeding process and this forgetting process, we have been rendered unable to get a handle on how to function in the material world. Listen to this quote from a speech by Virginia House Delegate Henry Berry after the 1831 Nat Turner Rebellion. Listen to this, what Mr. Berry says. This is during a slave conference, because Nat Turner had gone from plantation to plantation, killing slave owners and their family. And so the next year, they had a conference on the future of slavery and how to better basically implement it. And it was a debate. And Sir John Hawkins, Henry Berry was a delegate. And this is what he said. Sir, we have for as far as possible closed every avenue by which the light may enter the slave's mind. We have closed every avenue by which light or knowledge or spirituality, those all come up under that word light. We have closed every avenue. And we have only to go one step further to extinguish the capacity for light to enter the slave's mind. Once that's done, they will be placed on the level of the beast, and we will be safe. And so Henry Berry understood the process of making a slave. And then you had the other gentleman that wrote the Negro on developing a Negro. So this horrifying admission exposes the lengths to which the architects of chattel slavery went to maintain control, and frequently utilizing literacy bans and extreme psychological brutality to keep enslaved individuals subjugated. This is the length they have gone through. And the historians, by the way, historians and modern commentators continue to reflect on the long-lasting psychological and societal impacts of these systematic attempts to control education and extinguish our potential for performing in this world. And you can see it in the society at large clearly. We have been made, brothers and sisters, and this is hard to hear for some of you. We have been made a completely new people. We are not Africans. I'm referring to people whose slave ancestry was the purpose for the 1865 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery. That's who I'm talking about. We are not Africans. The people I'm talking about are the people whose ancestry goes back to the 1865 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, and before that time, and the 1868 14th Amendment, which granted citizenship to freed slaves. These two amendments were not talking about Africans from the continent. They were not talking about Asians. They were not talking about Arabs. They were not talking about new immigrants. They were not even talking about those whites who were imported to this land from Europe to occupy Indian lands. What I am referring to, and I'm using Negro in reference to those who are the offspring of once enslaved people on this soil. We have absolutely no idea who we are. And many have come to try to define us, much to their chagrin. And there is an effort, brothers and sisters, by a hidden hand to maintain that ignorance among us. So stop getting angry at Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, and that bunch for trying to suppress Black history. Stop getting angry at them. See, because anger blinds you to what's really happening. They are just paid, helpless puppets that really have no rights in the foundational constitution of this country. Do you notice that Trump and his ilk ignore the Constitution and have no knowledge of it while you're talking about democracy, 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 and they steady are ignoring it? They don't even talk about the Constitution. They have no knowledge or loyalty to the Constitution. It's not theirs. That's why. Trump's parents were immigrants. He's not even native to this land, nor does he regard the Constitution as our sacred document. And that whole ilk of people, you need to buckle up your seatbelts for what I'm about to say. Some of y'all think you know what I'm about to say, but you don't. You need to listen. Have no loyalty to the Constitution or the principles of the Declaration of this country. They're not native to it. That's the reason. Going back to what George Washington talked about these immigrants having no fidelity to the country, and you and I are angry because we're confused as Black people, and the white liberals have no idea what the hell they're talking about, nor does Trump supporters regard the Constitution as sacred. And that's why Trump can go on Fifth Avenue and do great bodily harm, pew pew somebody on Fifth Avenue, and not lose any support. That's the reason. Because they have no loyalty to the Constitution because it's not theirs. It's not theirs. So when they talk about make America great, what are they really talking about? The Constitution is not theirs. There is a hidden hand behind them that has an interest. Now remember, I'm saying, brothers and sisters, and white folk, foundational white folk, let me put that in there too, because what I'm leading up to, you're going to discover that you're a Negro also. I'm talking to the foundational Americans, whatever your way of getting here is. There is a hidden hand behind Trump and that ilk that has an interest in ensuring that the light of self-knowledge would never dawn upon our minds. And we realize that an imposter has claimed our birthright. We don't know. There's a hidden hand behind the scenes that has claimed our birthright or trying to claim our birthright. There is a situation where Jesus is dealing with some people in the Bible. It's in John 8. And he says to the people who believed in him, he said, if you continue in my way, in this way, that you will know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. This is found in John chapter 8. And then those Jews who believed in him said, what are you talking about? We shall be made free. We are the children of Abraham, and we have never been in bondage to any man. I want you to put a pin in that. He said that the servant of sin, whosoever serves sin, is the servant of sin and not the child. And the servant abideth not in the house forever, but the son abides in the house forever. But I want you to understand what they were saying. We are the children of Abraham, and we have never been slaves to any man. Now, I want you to go back to this story found in Exodus, where Moses raised up in Egypt as a grandson of Pharaoh, and then he went out among his people and he began to associate with them because he realized that he was one of the slave population, and they were in slavery 450 years. This is over 20 generations. Now, you may say, our preachers tell us that, this happened, but they can't be nailed down about any dates as to when this happened, when this thing occurred. You can't nail them down so that we can go examine it and see. Nor is there any historical documentation in Egypt which would suggest that there were Hebrews 450 years in Egypt and there was a great exodus out of Egypt. In fact, during the 70s, when Anwar Sadat was the president of Egypt and Menachem Begin was the prime minister of Israel, Menachem Begin tried to slip something in on Sadat by saying that, after all, we built your pyramids for you as slaves. And Anwar Sadat didn't fall for it. It was a trap. He didn't fall for it. He said, well, no, you ain't never been slaves in Egypt. We have no historical record of you being slaves in Egypt. And as you will note, there is no historical record of that occurring. So what I'm going to regarding this whole idea of liberation and exodus, there's no slave history of a 400-year slavery except in the United States of America. If you turn to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, there is an interesting scripture there that talks about this antichrist. And it talks about that the day of Christ is coming, is at hand. The day of Christ is at hand, right in front of you. But that day will not come except there first come a falling away, and that man of sin be revealed. The one who exalts himself above all that is called God, so that he, as God, sits in the temple of God, claiming that he is God. So we're looking for the day of Christ, not the Antichrist. But you won't see the Antichrist until the falling away comes first. And the reason you need the falling away first is because you are the ones that's covering up the man of sin. He's hiding in your midst. And in order for you to see, there must be a falling away first from where the man of sin is hiding. And once you fall away, and so the churches are trying to scare you and keep you in there by saying, well, there's going to be a great falling away first. This is only to keep you sitting there giving your money and scared. But the falling away is necessary so that the man of sin can be seen, the one who exalts himself above all that is called God, so that he, as God, sits in the temple of God claiming to be God. You got to fall away first. He's hiding in your midst. And it is the falling away that's going to allow you to see him. So now, let me give you the definition of apocalypse. Many people think that apocalypse means disaster. And like I say, this is the first session here. It's going to take more, so I'm just giving you an introduction. Apocalypse really means revelation, an act of revealing or communicating a divine truth. And divine truth is synonymous with principles which can be observed, examined, and agreed upon. Principles which glue a civilized society together, because that's what we're talking about, a civilized society. There's a story in the book of Exodus, and I've already gone over there. This Moses first had to civilize the slave society before they can experience the Exodus. And these people who would experience this Exodus would be the ones who set the path for the future, laid down the foundation for the future. And if you have ever read that story, there is a mixed multitude that came out of that thinking. White folk, y'all Negroes too. You just don't know it. We ignorant of our identity, but don't know it. But there was a mixed multitude that came out of slavery. And this story, as I said already, is an allegory. And as I said, there's plenty of reason to doubt that the biblical account ever happened. Egypt kept meticulous records of its history, and there's no record of a 450-year captivity or a mass exodus of Jews from Egypt. None. In addition, as I said, our preachers who insist that it did happen can't nail down any dates so we can examine their claim. And again, I want to reiterate that Egypt kept great records. You got to be reminded of this so you can reason. No slaves built the pyramids. It was paid workers who built the pyramids. But if you don't study archaeology and scholars from that area, you won't know this. You won't know there were no Jewish or white slaves in Egypt at all. So, the archaeologists point out that the pyramids were constructed centuries before the ancient Hebrews ever arrived in Egypt. And when the biblical enslavement is mentioned in the book of Exodus, it describes building of the city of Ramses using clay bricks, which differ completely from the massive limestone pyramids built by paid Egyptian workers. So this foundation I'm laying down for you in the book of John, I already mentioned that they claim, no, we've never been slaves to any man. See, they thought Jesus was talking about the flesh. So they responded by the flesh. And as a result of that response, saying that they have never been slaves to any man, and they went back to Abraham, the admission was that they were not enslaved in Egypt. Biblical account never happened in Egypt. I want to show you something about slavery. There was a meticulous way to keep our minds enslaved through spirituality. And so when the American slaves were taught, were allowed to teach, number one, the preachers were sanctioned and couldn't teach what they really understood. They were given a slave Bible. And in this slave Bible, the story of the Exodus was taken out. The story of Daniel was taken out. And any story that had to do with God rescuing people from slavery was taken out of the Bible. And this is the Bible that was given to our forefathers. And those concepts were taught over generations. See, in the slave Bible, it emphasized getting rewards after you die and obeying your master as a slave is equal to obeying God. In fact, in the book of Philemon in the Bible, there is the story of Philemon, of a slave. I think his name was Odessa or Nessa. He became a Christian. And he recognized his liberty in Christ. And so he ran away. And he met up with Paul. But Paul sent him back into slavery and told him to submit to slavery. So these are the stories, brothers and sisters, that was left in the Bible and preached to our forefathers for decades. And white folks, you don't know all of this. You haven't been told about the history, the true history behind the word slavery in America. Now, I've spoken often about the dynamics of survival. And these dynamics serve the number one goal of man, which is surviving for as long as he can at the highest level he can. And there are 8 of them, but the first 3, I want to zero in on us. as a nation and as a people within a nation. The first dynamic is the dynamic of the self. There are 8 of them altogether. And you want to express yourself in the world. You want to manifest in the world. Your body is a communication device. And you want to use your body to survive at the highest level you can for as long as you can. The second dynamic of survival is the dynamic of the family. And this is your progeny or your projection into the future, the family. And the third is the group. And this comprises your racial group, your bowling team, your church, your mosque, your baseball team. But zeroing in on the group dynamic, I want you to understand, brothers and sisters, Negroes, we are our own ethnic group. We're our own ethnic group in America. And for purposes of evolution, we're going to start with the basics. We're not Africans. We are Negro or black. And I'm using these terms for a purpose, and I know they can be enticing to garner an emotional reaction. But if you stay with me and hear through the series, you're going to understand. I'll bring it all together. But we are not Africans. Black man, you are not an African. And Africans are not native. Well, you are an African the same way a Nigerian that came over here in Africa. The same way a Portuguese person is African. The same way a Mexican is African. Everybody has DNA that comes from Africa. So in that regard, we are African. The white man is African in that regard. But we are not, as a nation, African. We are not, as a nation, European. We are not Mexican as a nation. And I'm talking to primarily the black Americans, but this is inclusive for all constitutional Americans. So the Americans that I'm specifically addressing is found in the 13th and 14th Amendment of the Constitution. I'm talking about those Americans and those Americans whose lineage come through that Constitution. And this is important, and I'm going to lay it out for you. So as we go through this series, you're going to see why it's so important to make that distinction. Going back to what George Washington said about these 3 great events, and that the last one would be immigrants. And I pointed out to you that Trump and that ilk are not foundational Americans. They are immigrants, and this is why they're not loyal to the Constitution. That's why they're not loyal to it. You can hear, you don't see them quoting it. And when you quote it to them, they ignore it. And they have sayings that they use, make America great again. And they don't have fidelity, a historical fidelity to the soil of America. Now, there are some other issues, but I'm trying to get you to zero in close enough so that you can reason out. So now let's talk about America. We have the Declaration of Independence. And let me get this up here. let me get the Declaration of Independence here. I got it here. I want to go through this. The Declaration of Independence. You're about to get a civics lesson now. I'm laying a foundation for you. And I'm talking to people who are constitutionally a part of this country from the outset. You will notice as I spoke about the Trumpers and the liberal Democrats, you are just as much a part of that foreigner as them Republicans. But you will notice when he talks about that the press is the enemy of the state. Well, which state is he talking about? The press is the only private industry that's mentioned in the Constitution. Freedom of the press. So how could the press be the enemy of the state? Which state is he talking about when he said the enemy of the state? The United States or the state of Israel? Which state is he talking about when he says that the press, which is the only private entity in the Constitution, is the enemy of the state? Which state is he talking about? He going to war for another country? Which state is he talking about when he say that the press is the enemy of the state? When the press is found in the First Amendment of the Constitution. How dare a president of the United States of America call the Constitution an enemy? Here is the Declaration of Independence. Brothers and sisters, you don't know the danger we're in. You don't know what's coming on you while you twerking and flicking your fans and arguing back and forth. And you brothers that's talking about the women are no good and not good for marriage. I want you to know that those who you are talking about are in the same category of who I'm talking about that are not native to it. They're not constitutionally native to it. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. This is the Declaration of Independence, which the Constitution is based upon. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Now, let me say this. One of my sons, he lamented to me, he said, "Dad, it's just a shame to be a patriot these days." He wants to fly his American flag. He wants to cheer for America. But he said, "Dad, it's a shame to be a patriot. And it's embarrassing, and I don't want to be a patriot." I said, "Son, this is when patriots are required. This is when patriotism is required. Patriotism is not required when you are functioning on all cylinders. But when there's a cog in the wheel set up, then that's when a patriot is required. So don't be ashamed to be a patriot. Don't be ashamed to have fidelity to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. And where did they get these truths? All men are created equal and that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. Now, this word certain doesn't mean, well, you just got a few of them, a few certain of them. This word certain, because it's tied to the creator who gives you those rights, that they are certain and sure, and they can't be alienated from you. But you won't know that until you go into the self where they are evident. But they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, rights that can't be taken from you nor given to you, black man who want to march for rights. And among these certain rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These three are among the rights. So it's inclusive of many, but these are among them. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, and these governments get their just power from the consent of the governed. And whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, what ends? The ends of experiencing the self-evident right. So when a form appears that's destructive to the rights in the Constitution based on the Declaration of Independence, it doesn't matter about the form. It doesn't matter about the rhetoric. But when this form of government becomes destructive to these ends. Well, what is destructive? When you're a criminal, when you only put criminals in the government, when you only serve the criminals in foreign nations, when any form of government becomes destructive to the ends of the security of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the other rights that are inalienable, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. And to initiate new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing the powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Do you want the Constitution or not? I'm not talking about no damn politician or no preacher. Do you want the Constitution or not? That's the question. Because when any form becomes destructive, it's the right and the duty to change that form. So I want you to ask yourself this question. Is the current form destructive to the Constitution and based on the principles found in the Declaration of Independence? Is the current form that's occupying the country based on that? Does it have fidelity to that? I got to preach today, y'all. You need to go back to the form that secure your safety, effect your safety and happiness. I know some of you black folk are up chucking, but I'm going somewhere. I need you to suspend your judgment for a bit so you can see. Suspend your anger and your grievances for a minute so you can see. And you white folk that want to hang on to a personality rather than the Constitution, you are being bundled along with the rest. Jesus tells the story of the wheat and the tares. And first, we're going to bundle the tares for the fire. You know, the rapture is the bundling of the tares, rooting out the thought that is against the self-evident rights that's placed in you by your Creator. Prudence indeed would dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. I want you to listen good to this. Governments long established should not be changed for long and transient causes. Transient means light causes, things, reasons that come and go. Oh, they overtaxed you this year, but they're not taxing you like that always. Or they did something that was just a flash in the pan. It didn't last long. So you don't want to change up for light and transient causes. And then it says that accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the form to which they are accustomed. See, this is what they're doing. They're getting you accustomed to daily foolishness to where you start ignoring it. The attack on the foundation of your country. They're not talking about the Constitution. You don't hear them talking about the principles in the Constitution. I feel this way, and this is what I'm going to do to make America great again. I don't give a damn if it violates the Constitution upon which America is based. But light and transient causes, you don't want to change it up. And it says that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the form to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object to evidence a design to reduce them to absolute despotism. Has it not been a long train of abuses? It's grabbing them by the P word. It's putting in criminals. It's causing a rebellion on the capital of the United States, a long train of abuses. It's firing specifically black women out the federal government just to rid yourself of women. A long train of abuses is raping children and hiding the files. A long train of abuses. Let me ask you the question. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, a usurpation means going above the Constitution. And you can see that what they're doing is pursuing a design to reduce you to despotism. Under despotism, is it not despots running the government? When you see a long train of abuses and see that it's evident that you are being reduced to despotism or under despotism, I want to say to the white folks that put that government in under our Constitution, do you not see this? That the Constitution trumps Trump? Do you not see that you don't be loyal to a king? Yes, you have grievances about how the society is running. Yes, there are some serious problems in the country, but you don't throw out the foundation of the country, the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence for a despot. Because when he's finished with throwing out your Constitution, your law, you next. You are next. So it is their duty to throw off such government. Now, how do we throw off such government? White man, black man, foundationals, Americans. How do we throw off this government? We become loyal to the Constitution. I want you to stay with me because you're getting a civics lesson today. It's their right and their duty to throw out those individuals who are functioning in despotism. We're not throwing the Constitution out. We're not throwing that out. We got to learn how to work within the framework of it. And I understand that the Democrats and the Republicans both are part of the problem. They're sold out to third parties. All of them. But the Constitution is what we want to base our objective on. Throw off such government and to provide new guards. Notice they use the word guards for their future security. Such has been the patient suffering of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrained them to alter their former systems of government. Now notice they start giving out grievances why they needed to change up. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. And then they give all these facts. I'm not going to read them, but I am going to list them. They give all of these facts of the in the Constitution of what Britain was doing that was reducing them to despotism. So I want you to read the Declaration of Independence so that you can see what they were grieving about, which caused them to declare their independence from Britain and set up a constitutional republic. And so we can use this same thing. And I have the latest foundation for you because what I got to say coming up in the next segments, in the next parts, this foundation is going to serve as a basis for your understanding. So what I want to ask you to do as I close is to read the Declaration of Independence over this week and read the Constitution of the United States this week. so you can hear what I'm saying. And so the point that I'm making, that I want to leave you with, is the subject matter that I'm talking about, this great Negro exodus and the 7 signs of apocalypse. This is based on the constitutionally organized people. That's what this is based on. I'm talking about you. Whether you be wherever you come from, I'm talking about the lineage of people who came out of the Constitution, out of the Revolutionary War, out of the Civil War even, out of the 13th, 14th Amendments. We got to have a discussion. Because it's hurtful for a lot of black folk, and it's hurtful for a lot of you. And there are those who's taking advantage of our hurt and causing us to war and destroy our own country. So I'm the Rational Man, and I want you to join me next Saturday or Sunday for part 2, and I will see you then.
Now, brothers, in closing, I want you to take this pledge. When I say I want you to say I, and I'll say your name. I know that there's so many names, but I want you to shout your name out so that the ancestors can hear it. Take this pledge with me. Say with me, please. I say your name. Pledge that from this day forward, I will strive to love my brother as I love myself. I say your name. From this day forward, will strive to improve myself spiritually, morally, mentally, socially, politically, and economically, for the benefit of myself, my family, and my people. I say your name. Pledge that I will strive to build business, build houses, build hospitals, build factories, and enter into international trade for the good of myself, my family, and my people. I say your name. Pledge that from this day forward, I will never raise my hand with a knife or a gun to beat, cut, or shoot any member of my family or any human children and the producer of my future. I say your name, pledge that from this day forward, I will never engage in the abuse of children, little boys or little girls, for sexual gratification. But I will let them grow in peace to be strong men and women for the future of our people. I say your name will never again use the B word to describe any female, but particularly my own black sister. I say your name, pledge from this day forward that I will not poison my body with drugs or that which is destructive to my health and my well-being. I say your name, pledge from this day forward I will support black newspapers, black radio, black television. I will support black artists who clean up their acts to show respect for themselves and respect for their people and respect for the ears of the human family.